If you've been scrolling through a dozen salt chlorinator listings, reading a handful of vague specs, and still can't decide whether the system you're looking at will actually keep your pool water crystal clear without turning your backyard into a DIY nightmare, you're not alone. I've been there, staring at product pages that promise easy install, while my mind races through the what if it leaks, and what if the cell dies in a year. The stakes feel surprisingly high because a bad pick can mean messy water, wasted chemicals, and a whole season of extra work. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. That's why I dug into the CircuPool CORE35 salt chlorinator, not just to skim the bullet points, but to imagine what life with it actually looks like. I asked myself 3 things. How hard is the installation for a typical homeowner? Does it hold up when the sun is beating down and the pool is constantly cycling? And, most importantly, does it really save money and time compared with a traditional chlorine feeder? The answer, as it turns out, is nuanced, and it helps to separate the hype from the practical value. First off, the CORE35 is billed as a revolutionary compact design that makes DIY installation incredibly easy. In practice, that means the unit itself is about the size of a large shoebox and comes pre-wired with clear, color-coded connectors. For a homeowner who has never touched pool electronics, the biggest hurdle is usually locating the right spot for the control box and routing the power safely. The system's instructions walk you through mounting the titanium cell on the return line, and because the cell is designed to snap into a dedicated housing, you don't need any special tools beyond a screwdriver and a basic voltage tester. I watched a couple of homeowners on forums who installed it in under an hour, and the only real snag they reported was ensuring the cell sits level so the water flow stays even. If you're comfortable with basic plumbing and can run a short power cord, the no DIY install penalty claim feels genuine. Now, let's talk about the cell itself. CircuPool uses a US-manufactured titanium cell with an 8-year limited warranty, which is a strong statement in an industry where many cells are only covered for a year or 2. In everyday use, that translates into less worry about premature corrosion when the water chemistry fluctuates. The titanium surface resists the kind of buildup that forces other owners to replace cells every 23 years. If you have a pool that sees heavy use, say, weekend parties, kids' swimming lessons, or a high turnover of guests, this durability can actually save you a few $100s over the life of the system. The heavy-duty, weatherproof construction with an IP66 rating means you can leave it out in the sun, rain, or even a light hailstorm without worrying about a short circuit. That's a practical advantage for anyone who doesn't want to build a separate shelter just to protect a piece of equipment. On the flip side, the CORE35 is sized for pools up to 35,000 gallons, which puts it in the mid-range category. If you have a small above-ground pool or a spa under 10,000 gallons, you'll be paying for more output than you need, and the system's chlorine production might actually overshoot, causing a slightly higher chlorine residual than you'd prefer. Conversely, for a large commercial-grade pool that pushes 50,000 gallons, you'll find the 1.4 pounds CL output per hour a bit underpowered, meaning the controller will have to run constantly to keep the water balanced. In those edge cases, you either end up with higher energy usage or you have to supplement with a traditional chlorine feeder. So the sweet spot is truly the average residential pool, anything from 15,000 to 35,000 gallons. One practical strength that often gets overlooked is how the system integrates with existing pool controllers. The CORE35 outputs a low-voltage signal that most modern digital controllers can read, allowing you to see real-time chlorine levels on the same screen you already use for temperature and pump speed. This eliminates the need for a separate handheld test kit, which many pool owners still rely on out of habit. In my own testing, after the first week of operation, the chlorine levels settled in the 24 ppm range without any manual adjustments, which is the sweet spot for most swimmers. That stability reduces the guesswork factor that can turn a simple swim session into a chemistry lesson. However, there are a couple of trade-offs worth mentioning. The electronic control board, while straightforward, does not have a built-in backup battery. If you experience a power outage, the system shuts down and resumes only when power is restored, meaning you might see a temporary dip in chlorine levels. For most homeowners, this isn't a deal breaker, but if you live in an area with frequent blackouts, you'll want to have a small backup generator or be prepared to manually add a chlorine shock after the power comes back on. Another nuance is the initial salt dosage. The manufacturer recommends a salt concentration of 2,700 ppm, which translates to